Hello and welcome to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. My name is Kyle Boone, and with me as always, Adam Finkelstein, Director of Scouting for 247 Sports. Today we're going to talk about the NBA draft. Heck yes. And we're talking about VJ Edgecombe and Parrish Jakuchonis from Baylor and from Illinois, respectively. Fink, how are we doing on this fine day?
I'm great. I'm always happy to be talking NBA draft with the nicest man in America.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We've done a number of different episodes on this YouTube page here, talking about mock drafts. We've talked about Cooper Flag, and today we're going to talk about two guards in this class who we both have ranked as lottery prospects, and kind of get into the strengths and weaknesses and maybe some comps of VJ Edgecombe and Parrish Jakuchonis. So we talked beforehand about VJ Edgecombe, and you have like 7 different comps for him. So I'm curious to see what your takes are on Edgecombe. But let's just kind of go high level here with Edgecombe. Talk a little bit about what he brings to the table. I know you're very, very high on him, and he's been kind of a riser for you in your latest mock draft. I think you had him at number 4 in your latest
mock. I've got him in my top 4. I think the interesting thing about these two guys is we both have them in our top 5, right? You have both of these guys in our top 5, and to me, that's where there's a cutoff right now. I mean, you could say there's a cutoff after 1. You could say there's a cutoff after 3. But I think there's a cutoff after 5 as well. Like if you said to me who's the 6th pick in the draft, I might have 8 names to debate between. Yeah. Whereas the first 5, it seems like at this point, there's some sort of like-minded approach, which may be a bad thing, but time will tell. So with regard to Edgecombe is someone that seen a lot of in the last few years, beginning with his junior year at Long Island Lutheran. He led what was then called the NIBC in scoring. Came back, played with Austin Rivers, Southeast Elite on the 3SSB circuit, came back to Lehigh as a senior. His point production actually went way down, but was driving winning at a very high level, playing with what was a hugely talented junior class. Now that class is a senior, and that was guys like Kyan Anthony. Had 4 different nationally ranked juniors in that class. Goes to Baylor and picks Baylor over Kentucky, over Duke in some of the most notable blue bloods that the highest level one and dones are usually most intrigued with. So that was a big recruiting storyline last year. And then got off to a relatively slow start, but really picked it up in the month in January. And I mean, really did it in a big, big way. And so here we are, right, trying to now account for it. And so I think, the way we can, and you know what, I omitted one pretty significant thing in that timeline, and that's what he did with the Bahamian national team this summer, playing with guys like Buddy Hield, with DeAndre Ayton and Eric Gordon during Olympic qualifiers, averaging 17.6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals per game, and shooting it at a pretty high level clip. So I think that led to a lot of optimism about what he could be right away at Baylor. So when he got off to that slower start, it surprised a lot of people. So I think for the purposes of this exercise, what's really helpful for me is if we look at it in a couple of different categories, and we can go over their strengths, we can go over their weaknesses, by extension, maybe even some swing skills, like what are the variables that could determine their outcome, and then talk comps. So do you want to go first on VJ's strengths?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Anything that calls for athleticism, I think, is a strength for VJ Edgecombe. You watch him at Baylor, you watched him at Lehigh as a senior. I mean, getting downhill, running in transition, cutting, any type of twitchy type movements, VJ Edgecombe is very good at it. He's good at getting out, running in transition, getting out in space, finishing dunks. We were watching some tape like before this. He is very, very good when he gets ahead of steam and is attacking the cup. You saw there a highlight of him finishing from the corner. He's a really good spot up shooter. According to Synergy, 74th percentile spot up shooter finishing. And that includes, shots where he's basically catching and shooting, but also where he's catching on the perimeter and potentially tacking as well. It accounts for that. So there's a high level dunk there as you're seeing kind of on the YouTube page there. Just a number of different ways where he can finish as a scorer, which I think is very, very impressive. 72nd percentile according to Synergy as a catch and shoot weapon. The way that he can get downhill, finish at the cup, I like how he finishes through contact. He's very strong. He seems like his frame is maybe a little bit more on the slender side, but the way that he plays is big. And I think to make look like a cross sport reference, Quentin Johnston, a TCU receiver who ended up going the first round, drafted by the Chargers. Great body. He looks like a super freak athlete, but plays kind of small, right, at the catch point. And the opposite is, I think, true of VJ Edgecombe, where he doesn't look like he has a towering frame or a huge body, but he plays big. He plays to his size. And I think that's very important for him. I think that the frame he's going to add some muscle and some strength to his body, proving and improving in the way that he's able to finish. So I've been really impressed with him and kind of the progression that he's made this season.
I agree with that point wholeheartedly. In fact, I've seen a lot of commentary about how he needs to get stronger, and I think functionally he's pretty strong. He's like aesthetically, yeah, he could wear more muscle mass. And to your point, I'm sure he'll continue to add it. But aesthetically, I think he's pretty strong. Here's what I've got for his strengths. Number one, and it starts with the athleticism. He's a big time athlete, one of the best athletes, if not the best athlete in this draft class, both in terms of his ability to rise up at the rim and even that first step, especially when he gets into these kind of catch and rip or just catch and go moves. Like if he has a really good ability to already be moving downhill when he catches the ball and be able to increase the amount of rim pressure he can apply because of that.
And I wonder if that's like just a Baylor thing, right? Not to cut you off here, but like Baylor's guards and their systems, like they have always prioritized and really kind of elevated guard play in a way that I think is really impressive. Like he is not the go-to everything for Baylor. Yeah. He's playing off of Rob Wright, who's having a freaking great season as a freshman.
Yeah, Rob Wright's awesome.
And so not to belabor the point, but I do think some of that is like he plays in a great system that's very guard friendly as well.
And it's a sophisticated offensive system as well. Really well coached, impressive stuff there. Defensively, that's the other thing to me. Like athleticism 1, defense 2, call it 1A, call it 1B, because I think he's got the physical tools from a deceptive power standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, from a movement standpoint. He's also got really good playmaking metrics, like when you look at his block percentage and his steal percentage. So I think those are the two things that basically everybody agrees on. Elite athlete, a ton of defensive potential. The things to me, which you mentioned the shooting, and I'm just, as a quick sidebar, the shooting to me is still the swing skill. I'm a little more cautious about the shooting than some. I think most people would agree with you, and I still want to see more. But for me, I think the two things that I have as clear strengths that maybe we don't talk enough about with VJ Edgecombe are the rate of improvement. And I made this point recently when I re-ranked the freshman class for 24/7. Like when someone just continues to get better at such a rapid rate and shows an ability to quickly adapt to a new level of play, that is really impressive to me. He did it with the Bahamian national team, and now he's done it at Baylor. So that speaks to his ability to continue to improve. And at the end of the day, 5 to 10 years from now, when people look back and they say, who is the best player in this draft? It is going to come down to that more than anything. It's who continued to get better. So there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about that for VJ. Yeah. The second thing, I think this is tied together, is just the overall competitiveness. I mean, this guy plays hard. He wants to win. He's about the right things. The fact that he was willing to sacrifice some of his individual offense last year at Lehigh is a testament to that. So those are the 4 kind of pillars I have for the big strengths: athleticism, defense, rate of improvement, and competitiveness for VJ. But let's go to the opposite side of this coin now and say, like, okay, what are we most, what are the concerns with VJ Edgecombe? I will yield to you on this one, Boone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of I think I would fall probably in the category of weakness. It's a little bit of both. Sometimes he plays as a strength. Sometimes it's a weakness. The way that he plays off 2 feet can be impressive, but he is such a special athlete that he's always just been able to win just going and playing off one foot and like just relying on his athleticism to blow by people. I've been pretty impressed, honestly. Like, I think this may actually fall more in the category of a strength right now. Like his ability to just like not completely rush things, right? Because he can blow by people, because he can get to the cup. He's so long. The way that he's able to kind of stop and pivot in the lane with 2 feet and just play like more controlled basketball when he has the ball in his hands, I think is really impressive. I think he needs to refine his handle. That seems pretty obvious to me. In terms of just like I think that would improve his ability to be able to finish. You know, there's a lot of times where he'll drive into the lane and just the ball will get poked out, or he'll lose control or whatever. He kind of keeps it high. He's pretty right hand dominant. I think he needs to be more dynamic with his left hand, both in terms of dribbling and finishing, just to be, you know, a little bit more dynamic. You know, sometimes the defensive closeouts are leaving something to be desired, where, you know, I think most of it comes down to his defensive potential is amazing, but sometimes at times when I watch him, it looks like he's just lost, either because he's scrambling because Baylor is scrambling, or he's confused. Like basically I chalk it up to like he's a teenage freshman playing in the Big 12, and sometimes that can happen. So
got to keep learning. Yeah,
it's not like alarming type stuff, but certainly, you know, I think as with most prospects who are, you know, 18, 19 years old, there's some room for improvement on his defensive ability as well.
You know what else I think that alludes to, and this is similar contextually to what you pointed out in my point a few minutes ago. Like at Baylor, he's able to play through his mistakes, and that doesn't happen for all these freshmen. You know, I mean, and you can see, to your point, you can see him make some mistakes with his rotations, and he's able to play through it. I've got his weaknesses distilled to, and I don't, you know, weaknesses is a harsh word, but like, you know, potential areas of improvement. Let's say,
of course, yes.
I've seen some people call him a combo guard. I'm not there yet. He's someone that I would have called a wing in high school, and I think he's evolving towards more of a guard, which is a good thing. But there's still, that process needs to continue. We need to see. I think you mentioned his left hand, spot on. Left hand needs to keep working. The handle needs to keep working. One of the reasons why he's got to be a guard and not a wing is the size. And he measured at Nike Hoop Summit 6'5" with shoes on. At Baylor, confidentially, on a nationally publicized podcast, 6'4" without shoes. So that's in line, right? 6'4" without shoes, 6'5", and that's 2-guard size. Yep. That's not, you know, that's not a wing. A wing's got to be a little bit bigger than that. Now, to your point, he plays bigger than he is. But so we're going to have to keep seeing those guard skills continue to evolve, because I do have questions about his on-ball reads, his on-ball decisions. We've seen a definite progression, but still need to see more. The finishing, and you alluded to this as well, for someone who is such a dynamic athlete, it's counterintuitive that he's not necessarily a better finisher, at least analytically so far. 56% at the rim, which is only 44th in the 44th percentile. Most concerning is that when he doesn't dunk the ball, when he has to lay it in, 46% on layups at this point, and that's just 17th percentile. So that's something that's really going to have to improve. Now, I think one of the reasons he has that problem is he has such burst. He gets to like within 3 or 4 feet of the rim, and sometimes he doesn't necessarily have great balance because he's playing at that same frenetic pace that it took to blow past his defender. And he's gotten deep enough so that while, you know, he's technically close enough to be at the rim that it counts as a layup, it's really not a layup. You know what I mean? Like he's off balance 3 or 4 feet from the rim, but the finishing's got to continue to improve. And again, I think that's tied to the left hand and the balance issues you mentioned. All right, let me ask you about the shooting, because to me, this is the swing skill. You said 72nd percentile for unguarded catch and shoot threes at 43%. That's a really encouraging number.
Yep.
Also 35% on guarded catch and shoot threes, 64th percentile. That's solid number. The shooting numbers off the dribble, not good.
No, they're down.
Yeah. 22nd, 22%, 15th percentile. Now, when I go back and I watch that film, I see a vast difference between when he takes a rhythm dribble, his shot is fine, and when he's using his dribble to still separate, and then he goes right into the shot. So basically, like, the ability to be a tough shot maker, that is not there yet. But I think it's important to differentiate between those points, because it's not that he can't shoot off the dribble. It's that the vast majority of his attempts have come on like separation dribbles and not rhythm dribbles. But you, like most people, are more optimistic about his long-term shooting, right?
I think I'm somewhere in between. Like, I'm obviously optimistic based off what I've seen from this season, in that in his role at Baylor, he's been able to basically serve as a functional 3-point shooter, because he frequently is able to be asked to stand in the corner wide open and make shots, or stand at the top of the key, or stand at the wing and knock down shots. Like, he's not a guy who's running the offense necessarily. He's not a guy who's initiating like an Ace Bailey, like, hey, there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock, see what you got, and let's run the offense through you. Like, he is not an Ace Bailey type shot maker, shot creator. And that's fine. He kind of is what he is. But I think your point earlier about, like, is he a guard or is he a wing? Like, it's complicated. It's complicated because he isn't necessarily refined in his guard skills in a way where you could just say, like, hey, this guy's a 2 guard at the NBA level. Like, I think he's going to have to be, but there's some real improvements, some progress that's going to have to be made in terms of his ability to create, to dribble, to be able to finish and pass and do things with his left hand. Like, he's pretty predictable in terms of even some of his finishing skills. Like, a lot of times he'll get down into the paint and he's going, and doing a curl or a reverse, like Cooper Flagg's go-to move, right? He does a lot of that. And I think some of that is just kind of predictable. So yeah, I mean, like, it's I don't think there's a necessarily a right or wrong answer here. It's just like, I think there's reason to be optimistic about it. The athleticism is great. The rate of improvement is awesome. The shot doesn't look broken to me. But yeah, if you dig into like the dribble jumper numbers and shooting off movement, I think there's concern about him being like a tough shot maker in the NBA. He's certainly not that right now. And I think long term, I think there's some real questions about what type of shooter and scorer he's going to be at the NBA level.
Well, and the reason why that's relevant is as we start to think about comps, we say, like, okay, I think he's proven, or he's in the process of proving, that he's going to be a reliable spot up shooter, right? And when you add that to the defense, you say, all right, so we've got a floor conversation where you say high level athlete who's like 3-and-D type secondary guard as a floor. But if for a ceiling, if you're going to get to the scenario where you've got to have some tough shot making in there, my belief is that the finishing will gradually improve. But the tough shot making is going to come around if you have like star caliber outcomes for a ceiling. So as you joked about earlier, I've got a lot of comps, mostly on research. Any you want to shout out, or do you just want me to read my list?
I'm going to shoot. Okay, so I had 2 comps here. One I like, one I just athletic comp only. The athletic comp is Zach LaVine, just because super athlete, super bouncy. The real comp for me is Andrew Wiggins, like a special athlete.
I had that one.
Yeah, and I figured you would, so I figured I would hop in line here. Andrew Wiggins, in that he's a special athlete, maybe not super dynamic as a creator, but decent size. Just like the strands of DNA in Andrew Wiggins' game makes a lot of sense for VJ Edgecombe to me.
Yeah, a little smaller. So like we said, he's going to have to be the guard version of that. I think there's some other ones that I've heard, like, reminds me athletically and physically, like there's some Shaedon Sharpe to him. The highest upside outcomes are, I've seen some Donovan Mitchell references.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with Donovan Mitchell is he improved more than any player I've ever seen, honestly, at least in the last 10 years from a skill development standpoint. I mean, Donovan Mitchell in high school was the best athlete I might have ever seen. But if you told me that the shot making was going to come around to the extent it has, I never would have believed it. So I think to say like he reminds me of Donovan Mitchell at a similar stage isn't really fair. Like I said, I think there's some shade and Sharp in terms of the physical thing. I think there's maybe even some Marcus Smart, Cason Wallace in terms of like hyper competitor defender guards. Again, these aren't perfect comps, which is why we're saying NBA DNA, not NBA comps, but you can take a little bit of each. So that's that's kind of what I got without stealing other people's.
No, I like that. By the way, I'm on KenPom.com's advanced stats profile for VJ Edgecombe just because I did look, and statistical profiles similar to Ayo Dosunmu, who like I don't think they're remotely similar in terms of
defensively. I could see that.
Yeah, Malik Beasley.
Okay.
Ben McLemore. That one seemed to be like, oh, I could,
Ben was like the shooter who couldn't shoot though. Right?
Yes.
Like he was the guy supposed to shoot, and I was like, oh, ball's just not going in.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And Tim Hardaway was the other one that kind of stood out to me. So none of them make like a ton of sense to me. Maybe McLemore just with the size and like the athleticism, but yeah, that obviously didn't work out the NBA for him. So I don't know. He's a very, very interesting prospect who I'm very excited about, and his like improvement this season. I think again, I'm more optimistic because I'm typically more optimistic for most prospects. I'm
certainly
very
more optimistic than me in most cases. That's 100% accurate.
And I'm pretty excited about like what he's become for Baylor, and like Baylor's like a very good team, and he's been a huge part of Baylor's success this season.
All right. Well, you know what? We went long on Edgecombe, so I think we're going to call it. There's your deep dive on VJ Edgecombe. Everything you could possibly want to know. Boone, you sign off a whole lot better than I do, so you want to handle the goodbye here?
I'll handle the goodbye. Yeah. I think that's it for today. So we're gonna save Kasparas Jakučionis for another day, because Lord knows we're gonna go long if we talk about Jakučionis. We will wax poetic for 30 minutes about him. So we will do that another time. Thank you for listening to this show. Go back and watch our mock draft from last week. Go back and look at some of our deep dives of some other prospects. We'll continue to be here every week breaking down the 2025 NBA draft class leading up to this summer. Go subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page. Follow Adam Finkelstein on Twitter, and we will catch you guys next time. Till then, bye.